Get started. This is Hashem. Today's daf is Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed Aleph.
Hi, Dalit.
Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph. Okay, so we're learning the Gemara that the obligations of what a father is supposed to do for his child. So one of them is for if he has a boy, la'asiya isha, to get him married to a wife. Minolan, how do you know there's an obligation for a father to marry his wife, to get him a wife? Because the pasuk says, "K'hu nashim vaylidu banim uvanos u'khu levnechem nashim v'esbneiseichem tnu la'anashim." It's a pasuk in Yirmiyah where Yirmiyah tells the Klal Yisrael to settle into Bavel and take wives, have children, and have your children take wives and husbands. So we see from that pasuk, it's part of the obligation of a father to have to make sure that his son gets married. So the Gemara asks a question, and we are holding, by the way, Lamed Omid Beis by about four or five lines where the lines get wide at the bottom. Bishlama Benoy. It's very clear that a son that you can. It's easy. It's not easy, but it's in your power to help him get married. Biyadai. It's in your power. You just tell him. You could force it upon him to take somebody as a wife. Ella bita biyadahu. Is it easy to get your daughter married? I mean, you have to convince somebody to marry your daughter, and that's a much harder job. So how can you say that there's an obligation on a father to make sure that his daughter gets married? That's subject to the decision of somebody else. And says the Gemara, Hachi ka'amalahu. This is what is meant by the pasuk. Nitin lamida. You have to give her some, spending money. Ulvashe, and give her clothing, unachasye, and possessions like a car, so that people will want to marry her. So you have to make her attractive so that she can get married. And that's part of the obligation of a father. Then the other obligation of a father is lalamdei umnus, to teach his son a profession. Amanalan, how do you know that a father's obligation is to teach his son a profession? Amar Chizkiya said, Amakra, because the pasuk said, Re'ei chayim im isha asher ahavta. See life with the woman that you love. So see life with the woman. Im isha mamash, if the pasuk means with the woman, that means with getting married. Kashem, so that it juxtaposes. Shechayiv lasiya isha. Therefore, just like you're obligated to get your son to marry a woman, kach chayiv lelamde umnis. You have to teach him about life. You have to teach him a profession. In Torah, if the word isha refers to Torah, because learning Torah is like being married to Torah, so it's also like a wife. So you have to teach chayim along with the other learning. Just like you have to obligated to teach him Torah, you're also obligated to teach him a profession. V'yesh oimrim, and others say af lashita banar. You have to teach him how to swim. So the question is, my tama, what's the reason? Chayusihi, because that could save his life. You have to teach him skills that he will know how to save himself when he's in danger. Rabbi Yehuda said, if a father does not teach his son a profession, malamde lustis is teaching him how to be a bandit, an outlaw. Listus salkadaitach. What do you mean? He's teaching him how to be an outlaw. He's not teaching him anything. Elo ki'ilu malamde listis. It's implying as if you're teaching him how to be an outlaw. In other words, because you're not teaching him anything, so he's going to grow up without a skill. And in the end, he's gonna, in order to make a living, he might do something shady. So, my benai, what's the difference between what Rabbi Yehuda said and the Chachamim? Chachamim said also you have to teach him a profession. And says the Gemara, Ika benayu the Agmari iske, that you taught him how to do business. Let's say you taught him how to be a stock to play stocks. So you taught him how to do something, but that's not a skill, because sometimes if the market conditions are not right, so then he has no way of making a living. But if you teach him how to have a skill set, a profession that's always around, that's a better teaching. So Rabbi Yehuda says it's not enough to teach him business. You have to teach him a definite skill so he will have a where to make a living from in case there's a market downturn. Kol mitzvahs ha'av alaben. The mitzvah said that any mitzvah on a father to a son, My kol mitzvahs alav ben. What does that mean? The father to a son have a mitzvah. Ilema, what is the mitzvah saying? Kol mitzvah the b'chayv abba lemevet lebrei. Any mitzvah that a father is supposed to do for the son. The Mishnah is teaching you nashim chayavis that the mothers are obligated. Is that true? What time you will learn to the Brisa, ha'av chayv b'vnoi l'moil v'toisai, that the only obligations for children rely strictly, mainly on the father and not the mother. Of ein imeloi, not the mother. So what does the Mishnah mean to say that if there any mitzvahs that you're supposed to do for your son, both men and women are obligated? Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Hachi Kamei, we're reading the Mishnah wrong. Call mitzvahs ahav, any obligation of a father to do for a father. Hamutelis ala ben lasais la'aviv, that its obligation is on a son to do for his father. So basically, honoring your parents, fearing your parents. So that is echad anoshim, the echad anoshim chayavim. Both men and women are obligated. Tanina lahadu taner rabbanim. Both. This is a Mishnah proves that the following brisa is accurate. Ish, the Torah says, Ish imay va'aviv tiro. Every person should fear his parents. Ainli el ish. It only says a man should fear his parents. Isha menayin. How do you know that a woman also has that obligation? Kishu oimet ti ra'u. Both of you. It's a plural way of saying both of you should fear. Harei time. So it's referring to both. The boy and the girl have to fear their parents. In Kei ma talmud loime ish. Why does the Torah say ish? Only the man should fear the parents. Ish sipek biyadei lasis. A man has an obligation to do. Isha ain't sipek biyadei lasis. A woman, a girl, after she's married, she doesn't have the wherewithal to perform the mitzvah of kibbud ava'im. Why? Because she's in the domain of somebody else. Because she's usually living by her husband's house, and she has obligations to her husband, so that she doesn't have really the time to honor her father. So that's why the Torah says it in the man form. Not that the woman is exempt; it's just that the ability, the situation ability is not so common for a woman, as she generally moves away to be with. But the mitzvah doesn't go away. Omar Ravidi bar Avim, Omar Ravidi bar Avim, Omar Rav Nisgarsha. Once they get divorced, Shneim Shavim. Then, if they get divorced, then they both have equal. In other words, if after she's married, the woman, she gets divorced, now she has the obligation to honor her parents. So it's not an exemption when she's married. She's just not. She has other obligations which prevent her from kibbud av, the aim. Taner Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. It says honor your parents, and then it also says honor God from your possessions. Hishva hakasav kibbud av aim l'kivayda makam. The Torah equalizes the honor you're supposed to have for your parents to the honor you're supposed to have for the Eibishter. Nema ish v'ima v'avitirov and nema ishem l'kechatiro v'yisisavay. Hishva hakasav moiras eva aim l'moras hamakam. The Torah equalizes the fear that you're supposed to have for your parents to the fear that you're supposed to have for the Eibishter. Nema mikala avivimay moisumas. It says that if you curse, you shouldn't blaspheme your father and mother. You can't be mikal the Eibishter. Hishva birkas av, the blessing, which is means the opposite of a blessing of the father, lebirkas amapat. So therefore, the Torah seems to equalize the way you're supposed to respect and fear and not say something bad about the Eibishter is the same way you're supposed to treat your parents. The Torah cannot compare hitting your parents to hitting God, because you can't hit the Eibishter. But the bottom line is that they're equal. This makes perfect sense. In every human being, there are three partners that make up the father, the mother, and the Eibishter. Each one gives a certain part to the person. And notice how the pasuk doesn't say to love your parents. The Torah doesn't say love your parents. It says love your neighbor, love your stranger, but it doesn't say love your parents, because the ikar is to respect, and that's something different. Respect and having fear. Anyway, the pasuk says Taner Rabbanim. Shloisha shutfim b'ain ba'adam. There are three partners in a person. HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'ava v'imay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is father and mother. When a person honors his father and mother, as if I'm dwelling amongst them, and you are honoring me. So when a person honors his parents, you should view he's like honoring the Eibishter. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Yomi says, it says in Eibishter knew clearly the nature of man. Sheben, a son, the son will honor his mother more than his father. Why? We go to Lamed Aleph on Aleph. Because she's always speaking softly to him, and she has a way to communicate with him. Therefore, he's more likely to honor his mother. Lefichach, the Torah does the opposite. The Torah puts the honor of your father and prioritizes that before the honor to your mother. And then the opposite holds true. God know that a son will fear his father more than his mother. Why? Because the father teaches him Torah and teaches him the way, gives him Musa and gives him ethical teachings. So therefore, he's more likely to show awe to his father than to his mother. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu prioritize the fear that you're supposed to give for your mother to the fear that you're supposed to give for your father. But basically, they're all equal. Tana Kamed Rab Nachman. It was Tana taught in front of Rab Nachman. If a person causes stress to his parents, it's great that I didn't live amongst them. If I was there, I would feel the stress, so to speak. I think what he's trying to say is that when a person is mitzayer his parents, so the Shekhinah rests between the parents, disappears, and so what? But you're causing tsar to the parents, but also you're causing shalom bayis problem, because now your parents are not going to get along with each other. The way parents do get along with each other is when they're shalom in the house. Isha, the Yud K. But if you're chasing away the Shekhinah by being mitzvah your parents, not only are you causing them stress, but you're also then causing shalom bias issues. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Kol ha'over avera b'seisef." If you do an avera in private, it's as if you're pushing away the Eibishter, the feet of the Eibishter. Shnema, the pasuk says, "Koim Hashem hashemaim kisi v'aretz hadoim ragloi." The Eibishter said that the Shemayim is my chair and the earth is my footstool. So therefore, my footstool is where I place my presence on planet Earth. And if you do Avera B'Seiser, quiet, and you think that the Eibishter is not watching, it's as if you're saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is not in this location. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, as a man is not allowed to walk 4 amos with a gait, G-A-I-T, with a arrogant way of walking, with a straight up erect way, which he cannot see below him, because that affects your inside. If you walk in an arrogant way, then that affects how you feel on the inside, superior. And again, God is everywhere, and by you walking in a certain way, you become arrogant, and you start thinking that there is nobody, God's not in this place. Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yeshua. Loimaski Arba Amos Begila Rosh. Rav Yeshua did not go 4 amos with an uncovered head. Amar, he said, Shechina Lamal Maroshi. God's presence is on top of me, and therefore I wear a covering, a yarmulke, so to speak, and that separates man from the Shechina. That we're just humans. There's something way, way, way above us. That there's a supreme being in control, and that's the Indian of wearing a yarmulke. It seems that not everybody wore a yarmulke. It's just he was at his time, he was priding himself that he's wearing a yarmulke. Shaul ben Almona Achas. We're back to Kibbutz Aveim. Shaul ben Almona Achas. There was one orphan who asked as Rabbi Eliezer, right? He asked Rabbi Eliezer. The guy lost his father, but he was asking a theoretical question. If my father says, give me the drink, and my mother would tell me, give me a drink. Who takes precedence? Who takes priority? Rabbi Eliezer answered, you should you should leave your mother and do what your father said, because even your mother is obligated in the respect for your father. So if there's a choice, who says give me to drink, you give your father before you give your mother. He asked the same question to Rabbi Yeshua. So the Rabbi Yeshua gave him the same answer: give your father first. Amalai, Rabbi Nisgar, what happens if my two parents got divorced and they're both each asking me for a drink of water? Now both are divorced, they're divorced, therefore my mother is not obligated to give respect to my father. She's divorced from him. If they both ask me to give water to them at the same time, what am I supposed to do? Amalai, Rabbi Yeshua said, I could look at your eyelashes and I can tell that you really don't even have a father. You just have a mother. So you're basically asking me a theoretical question. So he joked around with him, but he said, in the case where the parents are divorced and they both ask you for a drink of water, you should put water in a pitcher and coo to them to come to take a drink like a chicken. In other words, put it down in the middle and let them come take themselves, because none of them get precedence over each other. Darash Ula Rabba Apischa de Beinasiya. Ula, the great Ula, made a speech at the door of the Beinasiya. My diksiv, what does the pasuk say? Yeducha Hashem kol malchi aretz koishamer imre picha. All the nations of the world started praising God because they heard the utterings of his mouth. What does that mean? Mama piba lechanema el imre picha. It's talking about something that the Eibishter said, not that he's saying now. So what does that mean? When God was giving the 10 commandments, and he said, he said the first two commandments, Amru Uben Sa'ilam, the Uben Sa'ilam said, this is God's, he wants you to believe in him, but there's nothing in it for humans. As soon as the Eibishter said then they believe that the whole thing is important. Even the idea of believing in a God is important, because they see that God commands the respect for parents. You got to think of it this way: when Hashem says to respect your parents, people could teach that the reason is because you get arichas yomim. But also, it could be that it's therefore, if a person respects his parents, that's how society can survive. A society can have arichas yomim if they honor their parents, because a society that doesn't honor their parents, the society can't live on, because then there's no respect for the authority, and there's total chaos. So Kabbalah Savicha Vesemecha was a way to keep civilization going, and this is what the Malchi Umas Oilam were praising God for putting that into 10 commandments, and it's actually on the 5 side of the luchos, which represents Ben Adam Lamakam. The other side of Leisirtzach, all Ben Adam Lachaverai. Rava says, because they saw the end of the pasuk that told them, saw the end of the Saras Adibros of Kabbalah Sevichas Mecha. That's how they knew that the beginning of the Saras Adibros are true. They ask Rav Ula, at Heichen Kibbut Ava'im, to what extent, what is the extreme of Kibbut Ava'im? Amalahem, so Ula answered, observe this story about this guy named Dama ben Asina. He had a chance to earn 600,000 whatever profit. And the way to obtain this profit and do this transaction was to open up a chest. But the key to this chest, or the key to this safe, was under the head of his father. And he didn't disturb his father's sleep, and he lost the business deal. They asked Rabbi Eliezer, what are the extremes of Kibbut Avayim? He said to them, observe the story with one guy in Ashkelon. Again, this V'dama ben Esin Shmoi. It's different versions of what the story was with Dama ben Esina, but it's the same idea. One time, the Chachamim were looking for a precious stone for the ephod, B'shishin riba b'schar, again, for 600,000 in profit. Rav Kahana Masam Shmoinim riba, 80,000. Now, the key to go to the safe to get the stone was under the head of his father. The Loitziarai didn't want to wake up his father. So now the Gemara continues, L'shona Acheres, that another year, not next year, but another year, years later, Nasana HaKadosh Baruch Hu Skari, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him his reward, Shenol Deloi Paraduma Be'edroi, that a Paraduma was born in his flock, and Nichnis Chacham Yisrael, that's like the Chacham Yisrael came back again. They wanted to purchase this para, this red cow. Amalehem, he said to them, I know that if I would ask any price for this paraduma, you're going to give it to me. I'm only asking only the amount of profit that I would have lost because of the last time you came to me, and I lost the opportunity to make a 60,000 profit. So I'm asking that price for this paraduma. Fascinating story. I don't know if my father was sleeping and I didn't wake him up, I'm not sure if he'd be too happy about it. But this is the extreme of kibbud avayim that we learn from Dama ben Asina. A lot to speak about that. The reward, a guy who's not commanded in kibbud av, seems like he's not commanded. He got such a big reward. So whoever is commanded, certainly, and does kibbud avayim, will get a great reward. A person who's obligated to do something and does it is greater than somebody who's not obligated and does it. Because a mitzvah that you're obligated to do, there's the Yetzer Hara, you have more anxiety, and it comes to you much harder. So you get more of a reward for somebody like that. So therefore, us who are commanded in the 10 Commandments to respect your parents, and so even though the parents are not the right, maybe there's something about them you can't love, or you have trauma you have to work out, it's a mitzvah v'isa, it's a great reward. And then somebody who's not mitzvah v'isa. Amar Rav Yosef just says a side point. Miresh, Rav Yosef was a blind person. So he said, Miresh hava mina, I used to think, Manda hava mi, amali halachak Rabbi Yehuda, amasuma patam in a mitzvahs. Whoever would tell me that a blind person has no obligation to do any mitzvahs, I would say great, because the whole I'm not commanded to do any mitzvahs, but I'm doing it. So we see that it's great. Wasn't commanded. I'm doing extra credit. But now that we heard what Rav Chanina said, that just the opposite is true. It's harder to do a mitzvah if you're commanded to do it than if you're not commanded. So therefore, people who are commanded to do the mitzvah are getting more reward. So Rav Yosef, who's blind, would say, Adarabah, just the opposite. If someone would tell me that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, I would make a great Yom Tov for the Rabbanim. In other words, if you tell me that halacha is that the Summa is obligated, not like Rabbi Yehuda said that Summa is part, but a Summa is obligated in the mitzvahs, I would make a Yom Tov for them, because thank you, I'm obligated, and I'm blind, but I'm obligated, and it's coming to me hard, I'm getting great reward for these mitzvahs. Kiyas Rav Dimi Amar. Rav Dimi came and he said, "Pamachas hoye levava shirkran shalzav or Yosef ben Gedolei roime. Uvasa imay krasim imenim. The tafchaloi al roishai, the yarkoloi befonim." One time, this Dama ben Asina was wearing a fancy cloak, and he was sitting amongst the Senate of Rome, and his mother walked in, obviously on drugs or something, and ripped it off from him, banged him on the head, and spat in his face. And he didn't shame her. He didn't say one word. That's how great his kibbud avayim was. Tana Avima b'rei ba'avo. Avima taught. Yesh machal ave pasyoni v'tardim ben olam. Sometimes you feed your father such great delicacies, a special bird, and you're not going to get, and actually you get punished for such a mitzvah. And sometimes we go to Amud Beis, sometimes you could ask your father to help you mill the millstone, have him do hard work for you, and you bring him to Chai, and that kind of kibbud avayim can bring l'chayil mabah. What he's trying to say is that attitude is the most important thing over here. It's if you're feeding your parents delicacies, but you don't make conversation with them, then you're actually not even doing a big mitzvah. Just the opposite. They feel shame taking from you. And actually, and the opposite is true. If you tell your parents, I need help at work, and my plumbing business, I need help, and he asked your father to do help, but you're explaining to him that this will help me with the parnasa, but you're speaking to him with respect and understanding. That kind of kibbud av brings him to chayo olam haba. Amar Abavo, Kagoyin Avimi Bri Kemitzes Kebed. Abo said that my son Avimi, he gets the star of kibbud av. Why? This, my son Avimi had 5 kids who were not only learned, but he supported them, and they're all sitting around his table. So v'chi hava atza Rabavo kari abava, when me Rabavo would come to visit my son Avimi, and I would knock on the door, he could send any of his kids to open the door for me. No, just the opposite. He himself ran and opened the door. And not only that, he would say, yes, until he got there. He didn't just walk quietly up to the door and open it. He wanted to let his father know that he heard his knock, and that he shouldn't even have a little moment of anxiety that nobody's home. One time, Avimi's father, Rabavo, said, give me a drink of water. The ice lay nimnam. Rabavo went to sleep. Avimi bent over and stayed with the water until his father woke up. Istaya Milsa, so now he had special Shiyata Dishmai in his learning, because he was so careful with the mitzvah of kibbud av. He learned V'darsh Avimi Amizla Asif. There's a famous drasha and pshat that Avimi taught about the Pittel and Tehillim Mizmor La'asif, and he only got that insight was because he had the mitzvah of kibbud av. He didn't lose his learning because he was taking time to respect his father. Amalei Rav Yaakov Abaya. Rav Yaakov Avo said to Abaya, "Kagoyna no, make me adasinim bebeirav. I have a problem, the opposite problem. I have two loving parents. When I come home from yeshiva, Abba Madali Kosa, my father, he pulls out the becher, the silver goblet for me, the ima mazgili, and my mother is already pouring something for me to drink. Heichi avid. What should I do? Should I let them do this kind of service for me? I feel a little funny, but they love me so much. Maybe he was an only child. Amalei, so they told him, Abaya told him, Imach kabel, let your mother do the work. Don't worry about that. Ma'avuch like the kabel. Don't let your father do this work. Even the bar Torah chol shadate. Since your father is a learned person, he may feel a little bit of a low self-esteem because he's doing it, but he doesn't really want to do this kind of work, holding out a cup so you can be ready to drink when you come from yeshiva. Rab Tarfin had this mother. The Cholhemus to have a boy is the Mesa Puria. Anytime she wanted to go into the bed. He would lie on the floor. She would step on his back to get up to the bed. I guess it was a high bed. The Cholhemus to have a nachas, and anytime she wanted to get off the bed, she stepped on him to get off the bed. So he came to the base medrash, and Rab Tarfin said, "Look how great I am with kibbud av. With kibbud aim, I'm letting my mother step on me to get up onto the bed and get off the bed." So sometimes you do something so great, and really you fool yourself, because Amrilay, they told Rab Tarfin, "Adayin loy higata lechatzi kibbud." You didn't even keep half the mitzvah of kibbud av. Because did your mother ever throw a purse of money of yours into the river, into the sea, and you didn't shame her? So that's not kibbud av. It's only when you feel anger towards your parents, and then you don't shame them, and you don't ignore them. You don't call them. He even if they did something so terrible to you, you didn't shame him. That's where the mitzvah of kibbud av begins. We'll do one more minute and then we'll stop. Rav Yosef ki avashom kar the imei amar. When he heard the footsteps of his mother, he would say, I'm getting up in front of the Shechina. So basically, what you see is not enough to honor your mother, but you have to think that they're the greatest people in the world. That's what it means. Because when he heard the footsteps of his mother, he would say, I'm getting up because the presence of God is coming. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, lucky is a person that did not have parents. Because the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan ki ibartoi imoy meis aviv, yolatoi meis imoy. Rabbi Yochanan, he considered himself lucky when his mother was pregnant with him. His father died. When she gave birth to him, his mother died. The Abaya had also grew up without parents. So the Gemara says, is that true? Abaya Amr Le'ein. Abaya used to always quote his mother in his teachings. He Marbinte Have. That was not his mother. That was the one who raised him, his stepmother or something like that. But they keep saying that the mitzvah of kibbud aveim is so difficult that that they all said that it was better not to have parents. Okay, we'll end off with tomorrow with this story of Ravasi.